So with this haircut, she wants to keep the initial length, so I just trimmed the very, very tips already of the perimeter with a blunt cut. Now what you're gonna do is I am going to create a guideline in this haircut. One thing that I want you to keep in mind when you're doing a long haircut and you're putting really short layers. A lot of stylists that I have taught in the past have said to me, how do I know what's too short? How do I know that I'm not going to thin out the bottom perimeter of the hair? And I'm going to show you a little tip and secret that is a saving grace for creating short layers and knowing how short can I take that hair. So if you take this and separate a little space right behind the ear, I'm going to take the hair right at the nape behind the ear, okay? So right here in the bottom. And what you're gonna do is I'm gonna take that section of hair and I'm gonna hold this straight up, okay? This length that this hair hits here from the nape, again, right behind the ear, the nape section all the way to the top. This means I can't take my layers any shorter than that. So when I hold that hair up and I take hair from the top, I can take my layers here, okay? And I'm not going to thin out my perimeter. So by taking this length, holding it straight up, knowing that I can't take my layers here, because if I do, I'm gonna thin that perimeter out. Those layers are gonna be too short. It's not gonna look good, right? So that's gonna be your saving grace when you're doing a haircut and you wanna put those short layers in there, but you want it to look really good and I wanna keep that perimeter thick. So now we know that we took that section, okay? So I'm gonna take it one more time for those of you just joining. I'm gonna hold that up. I'm gonna take a very thin horizontal section right at the very top of the head. Okay, so this is gonna be my guideline for the whole entire haircut. So I'm gonna hold this up. I'm gonna comb these pieces together. And now I see I can take my layers that short, drop them down, okay? I don't like that they're hitting right on the curve of the head, so I'm gonna choose to drop them just a touch longer, so it sits softly over the curvature of the head. I know now that I can cut all this and her hair is gonna stay thick at the perimeter. So hopefully that helps. If you guys have any questions, I'm gonna try to catch them as you tag them. If I don't, I will come back at the end of the live feed and I will type in all the answers to the questions that you may have. So again, here is our initial guidelines. So I'm gonna take this straight up. My first guideline in this haircut, and everything to this is going to come straight up into the head, okay? So when I'm cutting this, I want you to have a imagination, right, of a box. So as I'm cutting, when you're doing this haircut, another way to know how am I cutting the hair, am I cutting it properly, is to find the curvature of the head and take, you know, your hand. If you've done this long enough, you can kind of look at it and just know. Or if you need to take two combs, I'm gonna place them right on the curve of the head and create a box. So all my cutting that I'm gonna do is gonna stay within this box of the hair. Everything is gonna come straight up off the top of the head and stay within the box. I don't wanna tip outside the box, because what's gonna happen, and you'll see as I cut this, is if I start to lean over, I'm going to shift the haircut and I'm gonna cut into my perimeter line. So again, I wanna make sure everything I take comes straight up off the head, okay, within my box. So going back to my guideline, I'm gonna take this section, a thin section, all the way across the top from the front to the back. This is going to be my guideline for the whole entire haircut. Straight up. Let's check our length one more time since I dropped that down and be sure how short we can cut. Again, there's that. I want it to be below the curvature, so we're gonna come about right in there. All right. I'm gonna bring her a little bit closer so you guys can see. When cutting this, remember straight up off the top of the head. As I mentioned before, I'm doing a dry cut. Shears matter, okay? I wanna make sure that my shears are extremely sharp to keep the hair in great condition. If you're coming in and cutting hair and your shears are dull, you're gonna rip through the hair, especially in some techniques I'm gonna show you in a little bit, and it's gonna compromise the hair. I wanna keep it healthy, shiny, and make sure that I'm keeping the integrity of the hair good. So I'm gonna bring this straight up. This is my guide of where I'm gonna cut. And generally my preference, and this is gonna depend on hair texture, is when I'm doing interior layering, like I am doing right now, I like to come in and point cut into the hair, okay? Point cutting is gonna give it a lot of texture, but it's also going to ensure that my haircut blends, that I'm not creating heaviness into the hair. If you have a customer who has really baby fine hair, then I might come in and blunt cut it, because it's fine enough that no matter how it lays, if I follow my steps, it's gonna blend seamlessly, okay? So now that I have my stationary guideline to the top, I'm gonna start taking my sections vertically up to the top. So it can start in the back or in the front, whatever is comfortable to you. But as I'm cutting my layers now, this is where I talked about to find the box. So I'm gonna take my sections as much as you can handle, okay? I wanna make sure that I have control of the hair. Talking about best practices, when I'm doing a haircut, it's very important that I'm taking the time to come all the way down to the scalp and bring that hair up. If I were to just pick up this hair, comb from the mid shaft, comb to the mid shaft, comb to the mid shaft, and up, I have all these bumps and bubbles, okay? And my haircut's not gonna turn out even. So just taking that time, if it's easier for you to section the haircut out, so you have more control, I'll do that so you guys can see, then section the haircut out, right? In hair school, they taught us sectioning is good to do a haircut, and I feel a lot of us hairdressers who have been doing hair for a long time get away from that, right? Because maybe sometimes we feel like it's going back to the basics, when that's what gives you control. If that's what helps you control the hair, part the hair, okay? I wanna give my customer a really good haircut. So I'm gonna take my section, I'm gonna comb at the scalp all the way up and shift this hair into that invisible box that we talked to. Everything comes straight out, my perimeter drops down, and I create my point cutting into the hair. So I'm gonna follow this exact same technique all the way around the head. As I said, this haircut allows me to have those customers that have that really gorgeous long hair and they want the really short cuts, right? I'm gonna show you this exact same technique on a shorter haircut to show you how we can do the same technique, but it gives us a completely different look. How many of you have customers coming in, right, asking for the wolf cut or asking for something similar, and you're like, yeah, I'd love to do it, but I'm worried because the wolf cut, right, really short layers to longer layers, and a lot of people feel like they're gonna compromise the length of the hair. If you cut in this manner, you can give her that really short, fun, sassy, short layers with the long hair and keep that perimeter nice and thick. Straight up, I'm gonna find my guideline, okay, my perimeter dropped out, and come in and point cut. Start to build that texture within the hair. Working from my back all the way forward. You can work from the front to back, whatever feels comfortable to you. So again, going back to best practices, I'm gonna turn her, making sure, yes, I'm working on the side. I have less hair, but I really want to be sure that I'm combing that comb all the way down to the scalp. Okay, take nice straight partings to ensure that I have control over that hair. I'm gonna bring everything straight up into that box, okay? So if I turn her, so you guys can see, everything is coming straight up. If I cut until here, I'm gonna be cutting into that perimeter of the hair. So I want to ensure that I comb this all up, bring this straight into that section off the top of the head, and then come in and point cut. you have somebody who has a lot of hair and you feel like it's too much to handle, just take a little bit smaller sections, thinner sections throughout the whole haircut, just so you can control the hair. Last section, moving forward, I dropped out my perimeter. I could take that, but I'm gonna cut and give her a nice curtain bang, so I just dropped it out. No need to take it in because I'm going to hit that in just a little bit with the fringe part of the haircut. Straight up off the top and point cut this. You can see that I'm really starting to build that texture, right? I have a lot of short layers, but they're seamless. So once I get to this point in the haircut, I can leave it, right? This is beautiful. The layers look absolutely gorgeous. They are seamless and they look really good. But I want to build even more texture in here. I feel like a lot of clients now want that beautiful layered haircut, but they want a lot of texture. They want it to silly, softer, sexier, sassier. They want to put texture in it. So when they curl it or when they add hairspray or taffy or something to the hair, it has more movement to it. Movement is easier for clients to style, right? Other than leaving heavy layers. So now that we have our initial length of our layers in here, I'm going to come in and I'm going to show you guys one of my favorite texturizing techniques that I like to do. This again is where it's really, really, really important that you have very sharp shears like we talked about in the beginning, because this is what I call my back cutting technique. And I'm going to move my mannequin a little bit closer so you guys can really see this technique up close. Okay, so when you're doing the back cutting technique, what this does is this is a texturizing technique that's going to build a ton of texture into the hair. So this is going to allow those layers to lay even more seamless, but have a lot of movement to it. So with hair cutting, one thing to keep in mind is that short hair moves long hair, okay? What do I mean by that? If I'm doing a haircut, how many of you guys have ever had the customer who's come into the salon and they said, you know, I love my haircut, but for some reason, this side kicked forward and the other side kicked back. Well, in my realization of cutting hair is, again, short hair pushes long hair, right? So if I'm doing a haircut that moves fluid to the front, all my texturizing techniques need to move forward. So if I have a customer that says to me, I want all the hair to frame my face, I want it to lay soft around my face, then I know any texturizing technique I do needs to go towards the face. And I'm going to show you what I'm talking about here in just a second. If you have customers that, you know, love movement in the hair, but they say, you know, I don't really love my hair hanging in my face, is there anything you can do to maybe help? Yes, we have growth patterns in the hair that are very strong, right? But we can break those a little bit using texturizing techniques. So if somebody says to you, I love my hair, I don't want it to fall towards my face, I want it to shift back, then all my texturizing techniques need to go away from the face, right? Short hair moves long hair. So if I'm texturizing, right, if I'm doing a texture and she wants it away from her face, all my blade movement should go back towards the nape. If she wants it to flow around the face, my blade movement will go towards the face to give that movement in there. So with this, I'm going to shift. I want to create a little bit movement going forward, okay? I'm going to shift her close. I'm going to do this slow so you guys can see the motion, and then I'm going to do the real cut because it's hard to do this technique moving really, really slow throughout the hair, all right? So I'm going to take my same sections that I previously had, and all I'm doing is creating texture with this technique. I could do a whole haircut with this. If you have somebody who has long hair that wants a little bit of kind of a look of a layering without actually putting really short layers into the hair. So what you're going to do is I'm going to take the same sections I had before. So I'm going to clip this out of the way because I want to ensure that you guys can see the movement of my blade and the scissors. Now, when you're doing this technique, another thing to think about, a lot of us cut with several different sizes of blades, right? Short blades, long blades, they all have different purposes. Maybe some of you are just comfortable with one size blade and that's all you use. There's nothing wrong with that, right? It's not necessarily the length of the blade, it's how you use the blade and how sharp it is. When you're cutting this haircut, I want to make sure that as I'm cutting that I'm staying towards the middle of my blade and I'm not going in towards the apex or towards where your joint is, because if I get too deep, I'm going to shred the hair. So I want to make sure that I'm staying farther out into the blade of this haircut. So my technique that I'm going to be using, and this is what it's going to look like in the hair, I don't want to open my shears wider than that, because if I go wide, the hair is going to get deep and I'm going to rip the hair. So I want to make sure that as I'm going in, this is the movement you're going to see. I am slowly opening and closing my blade as I'm cutting into the hair, okay? So I'm going to take that section back to what we previously started with. I'm going to hold this hair out. Now remember, I'm just creating texture. I don't want to create a new length, okay? And if I want to create movement forward from the center part, I'm going to shift forward. From the center part on the other side, shift forward. So take my section straight out. I'm going to place my blade in. So here's my length. I'm going to place my blade in, and this is what it's going to look like, okay? Is I'm going to shift through the hair. One thing to remember when you're doing texture, the shorter the movement, the less texture. The longer the movement or longer the stroke, the more texture that I'm going to put into the hair. All right, so blade in, I'm going to come in and I'm just going to create interior texture between my layers and shift forward. So when I do this technique, as I comb this out, you're not going to see a lot of hair fall, right? Just little pieces of hair to shatter that out, give it movement and give it texture. I'm going to move back just a little bit so hopefully you guys can see it. Elaine said, trauma treatment smells so good and makes my hair so beautiful. I agree. I love the trauma treatment. I use it in my hair every single time that I wash it. For those of you who are just hopping on, also another treatment I love, the keratin healing oil. I put it in my mannequin's hair before I started cutting to help give movement to my blades, to soften the hair and give it some slip. So again, here's my layer that I created. Okay, found out with my finger. I'm going to place my blade in, and as I texturize, I'm going to move forward. So blade in, I'm going to shift down towards the face. And this is what we call the back cutting technique, right? I tell people it's kind of like back combing in the hair, but with shears. Do not close your blade all the way, or you're going to cut a big hole and she's not going to like it very much, right? So I want to be sure that I'm slightly closing and pushing forward, slightly closing and pushing forward. Never shut the blade all the way. So I'm going to do this again, moving forward, and then we're going to hop into the face framing of the haircut. So a quick movement, sharp blade, staying within the front tips of that blade, shifting the hair forward. And as I said, you're not going to see a lot of hair, okay? Just little pieces of hair to create texture in that cut. All right, last section towards the front, and then we're going to create that fringe. Hopefully this is a technique you guys feel like you can use. Like I said, adding it to the techniques that you're already using. You could do a whole haircut, just create a little bit of texture in there as well. All right, so now as you can see, I already cut the other side, like I said before, so you guys can see the cut. So I'm gonna match up the fringe. Curtain bangs are huge, right? Or a lot of texture around the face is really huge. So I'm going to show you guys a fun way to create texture. I find that sometimes clients want a really heavy curtain bang, right? They want it to sit really, really heavy, and some want that nice looseness around the face. So this, I went with a little bit of a heavier, but still blended in with the layers, okay? So I have this front heavier bang here, but that, or fringe that goes into the front. So what I am going to do is the same back cutting technique. as I used on the side, but this time I'm going to use it to actually remove length in the hair, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that fringe section and I'm going to clip this out of the way so you guys can really see this technique and see where I'm at. I'm going to take a guideline from the other section. If I'm just cutting this, then figure out where I want the hair to lay. If I want it to sit at the cheekbone, I'm going to place my fingers directed. Where do I want the hair to end? Across and then cut. But since I've already cut part of this hair, I'm going to take a small section from the other side as my guideline. Okay? I'm going to take this hair and I'm pull it across her face. Now by doing this, this is going to create a lot of softness, right? So it'll give me that nice fringe, but it's going to lay really soft around her face and be dispersed so it's not too heavy. She has movement so she can play with the front fringe area. So here's my guideline. I'm going to place my fingers in and I'm just going to come in. And this time I'm doing the same back cutting technique, except for notice that my blade movement is shorter and I'm cutting all that hair. So this time I'm actually cutting all the hair off. Okay, look at this. See if it's laying how I want. If not, again, I'm going to grab that section. Still keeping it between the knuckles. Okay, I know that we've heard it over and over again. When we're cutting hair, we want to stay within the fingers and the first knuckles and not go into the second knuckle, right? So same thing applies here. So I'm going to shift the section over. I want to create a little bit less texture, a little bit more heaviness. You can see that I cut before. This is beautiful. You can see a lot of texture. I'm going to take a little bit more of that out just so it sits a little bit of a heavier fringe. Come in. Remember to stay in the tip of my shears. And take a little bit more of that texture out. Okay, I'm going to move this pin. What do you guys think of that technique to do a nice curtain bang, right? So it gives you that heaviness, but it still has movement. So if she curls it and wants to push it back, she has that texture in there. Now I personally want to come in and just slightly blend this a little to soften that line so it's not so heavy. Again, would I do this all the time? No. If she wants a heavy curtain bang, I'm going to leave it. But to give her a little bit more texture that blends, I'm going to pull this all forward now, okay? But this time I don't want to remove all the length. I want to go back to creating texture. So I'm going to come in with longer strokes to create more texture into the hair and not remove so much just length in the hair. What do you guys think of that? You like all the texture that you see in the hair? Like I said, if you have any questions with the techniques that I'm using, please post them at the bottom. I'll try to catch them as they come across. If not, then I will get back on later and answer them for you. So there is a long version of this haircut. Lots of texture, long layers. But now, since we have a little bit of time, I'm going to come in and show you on a short haircut. So again, wolf cuts are huge, right? A lot of short layers, kind of more of that rocker style, a lot of layering in the hair. So I pre-cut half of her, a little bit more texture, a little bit more movement, a little bit more fun. Same idea as before. So for those of you who are just now jumping on to this segment, when I cut layers in the hair, again, how do I know how short I can cut the layers? Same thing goes in the wolf cuts, right? I know that it's really short layers, almost kind of disconnected, but I still want it to blend and I still want it to have movement and I still want it to look beautiful. So I want to make sure that I'm not cutting it too short, right? So that way it looks really nice. So what you're going to do is you're going to take that section behind the ear. So I'm going to take that section behind the ear, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to comb this straight up. Grab a section of the hair from the top and hold that up. I know when I cut this haircut that if I take my layers any shorter than this right here, I could cut into the perimeter of the hair, right? So a good safety net is holding that hair up from right behind the ears, straight up. That's how short I can take my layers. So I know I can take these pretty short and pretty fun and still leave, excuse me, that perimeter really thick. So this side is already cut. I'm gonna come in and I'm gonna cut this side for you. Now, when I cut the long hair using this technique, I came in and did diagonal sectioning all the way up. You can do that, but when you're cutting really short hair, what I like to do is actually take horizontal sections across the top of the head and bring everything straight up, okay? Remembering, same thing with this haircut as the long haircut, that I have my box. So if I place my 2 combs on the head, I want to make sure that when I bring all that hair up, that it goes straight off the head and I'm not tilting outside the box. So staying inside where my combs sit, okay? Now I have this side pre-cut, so this is going to be my guideline. But if I were to have this be the first cut of the whole entire haircut, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this section straight up. I'm going to pull that little section from behind the ear. I'm going to hold that up and see how short can I take those layers, right? I can go really short with that. So we could take it there, which is what we're going to do. All right? Are you guys enjoying these cutting techniques? Hopefully learning something new and maybe a light bulb, right? That aha moment goes off like, oh my gosh, that is actually something that I can utilize. It makes sense now. Doing short layers makes sense without cutting into the perimeter. And that's all that I hope you guys get from today, is just one tip and trick that you can take back and utilize in the salon. So I'm going to turn her this way and you guys can see from a different vantage point. So everything I'm going to take horizontal sections from the side all the way across the head. I'm going to bring this straight up into the box and a 90 up from the head. Okay, I have my layers there from before, and I'm going to point cut. Her hair is very thick and very, very coarse. So when I cut this haircut, I want to ensure that I'm point cutting her texture, just to ensure that my layers lay soft and lay very nice in the hair. If I were to come in and blunt cut this, could you? Absolutely, why not try? But sometimes when you have very thick, coarse hair, like myself, and you come in and blunt cut the interior of a haircut, it has a tendency to lay very heavy. It doesn't have a lot of movement. So as I come into this and I bring my section straight up at a 90 or into that box from the side of the head, right? I'm going to come in and point cut into that haircut. Cutting to that first knuckle. Once I hit that first knuckle, I'm going to shift back, take my next section, and come straight across. I'm going to turn her now this way so you guys can see from the other vantage point. Normally when I cut this haircut, I stand like I just was on the side that I'm cutting. But so you guys can see my parts and how I'm holding it, I'm going to shift and cut from the opposite side. Okay? So take my horizontal sections. When you're cutting this haircut and you get to the perimeter, if you're getting to the perimeter and you're not running out of hair, then that's not a good sign, right? So ensuring we lift that back portion up to see how short we can take those layers is important. When I get to this next step right here and pull all this hair up, I should run out of hair to cut, okay? And that will ensure that I leave that perimeter of the hair thick. So again, there will be no hair to cut there. And this will give me those really fun short layers that are really, really blended at the same time. Okay, so I'm going to come through the back section, match that up exact same way. So horizontal sections, bring everything straight up and point cut into that. Again, straight up from the back and you're working on hair that's staticky, or as I'm working with it, it's starting to build static in it and you need a little bit of product in there, one of my favorite, like I said, is the keratin healing oil. If you have somebody that has just a little bit too much texture and you need a little bit of grip, a little bit, not a lot. Sometimes I'll come in with a taffy, a tiny, tiny, tiny bit, because again, I don't want to remove too much slip from the hair, but I want to control the static. Electricity, like I have in my area, because we're a dry climate right now, I'll put a little bit of this in just to help condense down and get rid of that static in the hair. I'm just going to come in and double check, make sure all my layers are laying nice and that I have them cut perfectly. I'm going to shorten this up just a tiny bit. I'm going to show you guys, as soon as I get this in, a really cool technique that I absolutely love to utilize for those customers that have cowlicks in their hair, okay? How many of you guys have clients that have cowlicks in the hair? It likes to separate, whether it be in the back and they get that you know, separation where it constantly wants to lay and split, or they have a cowlick towards the front or towards the side. Or if you have customers that say, I love my haircut, it just falls flat. I need more volume. I need more texture into the hair. I'm going to show you a cool technique, kind of like the back cutting technique that we just did, but in the perimeter or in the back of the head, okay? So here at the top of the head, if you have the crown of the head, if you have a customer who splits, mannequins split really strong because they're sewn that way. So what you're gonna do, I'm gonna tip her because I want you guys to see how I take this section of this hair, is I'm actually going to take a circular shaped section around the split of the hair, okay? So if my split lays really strong right here, what I want to do is I want to make sure to encapsulate hair all the way around. So I'm going to take hair, a circular shape around the sections that like to split. Or as I said, if they just want to build volume in the crown, I'll just take circular shaped sections throughout the whole top of the crown and help build volume. Now, this is one technique that I always tell stylists when I teach them, if you've never done this technique before, please practice it. And when I say practice, we don't use our clients to practice, right? We use a mannequin or our in-laws or somebody else that we can work on, but I want you to practice this technique before using it on a customer. So what I'm gonna do is I took that section all the way around where it likes to split or I want volume, and I'm gonna give it a light twist to the section, okay? Don't twist it really, really, really tight because that's not going to be easy for you to cut, okay? So what you're gonna do is you're gonna take this, you're gonna give it a light twist to it, so very light. When you're holding the hair in your hand, these fingers are holding lightly, so you don't want to grip tight. I need the hair to be able to move between these fingers, okay? And again, like we talked about before, when I'm cutting this, I really want to ensure that I'm staying in the tips. I don't want to go deeper than the middle of the shear, okay? I don't want to go clear down in here. I want to stay right in the middle to the tips of the shear. It's very important with this technique. One other thing to think about is the texture of hair. So remember that texture of the hair will lay a certain way. If I have a client that has very thick, coarse hair like my mannequin, and I create texture that's too short to the scalp, I'm going to create regrowth, right? Hair that wants to stick straight out from the head. So this technique is extremely important that we understand where the hair lays or where the natural fall of the hair is. So when I do this texturizing technique, I don't want to come too close to the scalp. With her texture, the way it wants to lay, I want to make sure that I'm staying at least probably 2 inches out from the scalp, okay? So a light twist on the section. I'm going to lightly hold that in between my fingers. I'm going to take my shears, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to place them in, and I'm slowly going to close, shift down, open, close, shift down, and that's going to be the technique, okay? So This is back cutting. Now what this is doing is this is creating interior, short and long. Again, not removing a lot of hair, okay? And this creates little hairs that's going to pull that section together. So if they have that cowlick that likes to split, or they don't get a lot of volume, this is going to create a lot of interior texture. See that? That helps give that lift to the section, that helps to pull that together. So I'm going to show you guys one more time on another section of hair. So a circular. Now when you take this circular section, it's really important also that I'm not taking a big circle, right? I always tell stylists I want to keep my diameter of my circle no bigger than 2 inches, just because if I get too much, it's hard to cut. It doesn't blend and it doesn't look right. So I'm going to take a circular section at least 2 inches or smaller. Okay. Again, I want to give it just a light little twist. I don't want it to be twisted too tight. I'm going to hold that hair lightly between my fingers and I'm going to back cut, staying in the tips of my shears. So placing it in, as I shift down, notice that my blades don't come all the way down. That I said I'm shifting and I want to stay about 2 inches away, okay? So come in, cut, open, and I have to do it quicker because this technique is very hard to do when you're doing it slow. And again, when I do this, I don't want a lot of hair, okay? It should be little itsy bitsy pieces of hair coming out to create that texture and lift into the hair. What do you guys think? Love that texture? Hopefully it's something. It says, love your instructions. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. All right, I have one last technique to do for you guys on the shortcut so it matches on both sides. And then after that, I'm afraid our time will be cutting short for today. So I'm gonna lift her up. We'll do the front fringe area. And I will style these mannequins out and post pictures on my social media and on the Lanza page. My social media, if you guys want to go on there and check out these cuts after, and I'll give it to you again at the end, is Tasha, that's TAUSHA_love hair. And I will share the images and pictures of the cuts that I just did for you. So to show you again, kind of the same thing like I did with my long haircut, I'm going to do the same with my short. I'm going to match up my fringe from this side, okay? I'm going to over direct this all the way across her face, and I'm going to cut the front fringe for the other side, remembering to keep in that apex of the shears. As I hit that second knuckle, I'm going to be sure to stop my cut, re-comb the hair, always combing from the scalp all the way to the ends. That section I just cut can drop, and that's where I'm going to pick back up again. Okay, a little bit shorter stroke than what I use for the texturizing technique. Again, hit that second knuckle. I'm going to comb through that, find where I stop cutting, let that fall out, and then finish cutting the rest of the fringe. This just gives you that nice, soft, fun, playable texture and a great fringe in there. All right, so that is the hair cutting techniques. Again, I hope that you guys enjoyed them. Remembering that all the techniques that I shared with you guys today is an addition to everything that you already do. Remember, there's so many different ways to cut hair. So this isn't the right way, this isn't the wrong way. It's just one of my ways that I find is successful behind the chair that gives me that beautiful, soft, layered cut that can have a lot of interior texture, but keeping my perimeter strong as well, right? So exact same haircut, one on short, one on long, but gives you two completely different looks. Remember to utilize your Lanza hair care, right? The KHO oil, my favorite to use to put through the hair to cut, or again, coming in with a little bit of taffy if you need just a touch of texture to help control the hair. Those are my two favorite products that I personally use when I am styling my mannequins. And then also the last but not least, like I said, for those of you just hopping on, before doing a dry cut, love for my clients to relax. So using my CBD serum as a scalp massage to just relax them and give good nutrients to the scalp as well. Again, thank you guys so much